Hi. Welcome to Outrageous, our bi-weekly program where we talk about race, media, culture, politics, and everything in between. We are doing this live. My name is Chris. I'm in New York City. I am joined by my two very best friends, Jason in DC.
Hey, Chris.
And Trecia in LA.
Dramatic pause.
Who is late because she's trapped in Los Angeles traffic.
Our first live episode.
And our first live episode, and Trecia cannot get it together. Please keep that in mind, all you people out there who are Team Trecia.
That's right.
Jason and I were committed. We cleared our entire schedules to do this all day long, and Trecia couldn't even be bothered. So I don't know what to say about that.
Or she's purposely delaying so she can make a dramatic entrance.
She can make a grand entrance.
Hijack the conversation.
Yeah, so Trecia actually will be here in a couple of minutes, and we are going to warm up people for her. So this is live as we're saying it. You are hearing it, which is not usually how we do things. If you are watching this on our YouTube watch page, you can you can chat with us, and we'll get the chats in real time. And hopefully some people will want to come onto the show, and then we can, if you message us your Gmail address on Facebook, that's probably the easiest way. Or if you're comfortable just putting it on the chat on YouTube, if you have no fear, then we can add you in. And maybe you have something interesting to say. If you don't, we'll just cut your mic and move on. So, Jason, what's up?
Chris.
What's up?
You know, I have to admit, I noticed that one of our followers, one of our listeners, posted that is it true that the whole episode is going to be about the late, great Alan Thicke? I actually didn't realize Alan Thicke died. I had to Google that to see if that was true.
Oh, no, Alan Thicke has died. I've been staying. I thought it might be an invitation for Kirk Cameron to say something really, really terrible, because that's sort of like his thing. So... but so far he's been very quiet. Alan Thicke died while playing hockey with his son.
Oh, I didn't even know that part.
Yeah, wow. It was like his chest hurt, he threw up, and then he just died, which was sad. 69 sounds really young to go. Plus, growing pains. Which, what the thing about those shows?
I know a lot of things about those shows. What are you going to say?
Those shows, always 2 staircases. Right? Always 2 staircases.
True. That's not what I was expecting you to say, but that's true.
Growing pains is supposed to take place on Long Island, where I grew up. And let me tell you something. No one had 2 staircases. And 2 staircases, one room away from each other. Like your staircase living room and a staircase in the kitchen. But same thing in different strokes.
Be some reason for that, right? There's got to be something about blocking with the actors.
Well, it's so you can have more. It's so you can have more comings and goings, right? You can have characters enter from the kitchen. You can have characters enter from the living room, and lots of chances for hilarious listening to other people.
I thought what you were gonna say is
eavesdropping. What I meant to say.
I mean, I remember when Seinfeld came out, and what was so. I mean, this sounds stupid, but I never realized. I guess prior to that time, the sitcom as a genre. I was not at a point in my life where I was thinking critically about things like that. And it didn't even occur to me that you could have a sitcom that wasn't like a morality play. Because Growing Pains and all of those shows, they all were sentimental. There was always a lesson at the end. I mean, they were really morality plays.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it never occurred to me that was like a construct until watching Seinfeld. And it was like, there's no sentimentality at all. It's the same, 30-minute format, ensemble cast, and yet it never towards the end is there sentimental music being played as someone sits someone else down and explains to them what it means to be a friend or whatever. That was a real shock.
Well, you know what? Since Trecia refuses to join us, since she has completely abandoned the podcast, we have a listener who wants to come on and take her place, albeit
let's do it.
A short time. So we are going to bring her on here and see if she's better at this than Trecia is.
Oh, wow.
You know what, Trecia? Being late just may have cost you your high-paying job on this podcast.
You're gonna be cut. She's gonna be cut.
Going to get cut. So let's see if this works. This is new for all of us. If you're listening, prepare for like the best 90 minutes of technical difficulties that you have ever experienced. We barely know what we're doing. We just put this together today. And so now on the call,
I'm taking over.
We have Janina with us. Hi, Janina.
Hello.
Welcome
Janina.
to Outrageous.
Yes, thanks for joining us.
I'm ready.
Okay, so let's start with, first of all, you are the new third host on the show.
Oh, I have to mute my YouTube. Okay, sorry.
It's bad.
There,
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
When we bring you on, please.
I should know better. This isn't my first time at the rodeo.
No, it's not. You actually run another podcast that has Trecia on it, which she is always on time for, unlike ours. But whatever.
Because you guys are the Stepchild podcast. Didn't you know that?
Thank you.
Okay.
You know what? This is a great way to intro the show.
Yeah, this is great. Somehow Trecia is still fucking up our shit, like without even being here. Trecia is still.
Janina, thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
No, Janina, this is the Alan Thicke hour. Do you have any memories of Alan Thicke that you want to share with us? Any memories of early Leonardo DiCaprio that?
No, sorry.
Okay.
I don't.
Well, what do you want to talk about?
I mean, we could talk about Robin Thicke.
Oh, let's talk about Robin Thicke.
Do we have to?
No, we don't have to. But that's all I've got as far as the Thicke family.
Thicke family.
Sorry.
That's funny.
You like that?
Yeah. So, Janina, you listen to our podcast, I take it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're just asking everybody. So are you team Chris, Team Jason, or Team Trecia?
Why are you punishing us?
I think I am probably Team Trecia, always feel sorry for Jason, Chris is mean.
Wait, what did you say?
You said you were mean.
Chris is mean. You're the mean one.
I am not the mean one.
Oh.
Who the hell do you think you're talking to? Get off my
Listen
podcast.
to you.
Yeah, there
Oh my God. She's right. Why do you feel bad for Jason?
Right.
Jason's a grown man who can hold him. I've been arguing with Jason for my entire adult life. He can handle it.
I feel like Jason's place in the podcast is almost like my place in my podcast sometimes, where you're trying to play the devil's advocate and everybody jumps your shit.
It's reverse racism.
You know, well, get there's nothing reverse about it. No. I feel like that's the role I play on the podcast, because Jason's always like, shiny, happy idea. And, you know, I walk in, I'm like, fuck your idea, kid. And I'm like,
that's not devil's advocate, Chris. That's dismissing. You dismiss other ideas. There's a difference.
He doesn't deny this. Not really.
No.
I'm not dismissive. I think your ideas have to be tested for intellectual rigor.
Okay. Why don't you share with Janina and the audience your idea about social media that we talked about when I was in New York last week?
So, Janina, this is what we were discussing. So I was talking about, like, I don't know if you heard, but Donald Trump is president-elect of the United States of America.
I'm ignoring that.
Keep that confidential. Nobody knows.
Secret. Anyway, as part of that, as last episode, I think we were talking about Trump's tweets and just all the shit that he gets away with, and fake news being this terrible phenomena. And I was thinking we should just cancel all social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, keep Grindr, get rid of the rest of them. Because I think the ability that we as individual people cannot control ourselves when it comes to spreading information. We don't know how to do it. We don't know how to take in information. We should not be charged with selling it, with spreading it. Janina, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that's pretty unfair. Just because he's an idiot doesn't mean that we're all idiots. You don't get to put us in that box.
I don't know if you've been on Twitter, but he's not the only idiot.
No, I know. You're right. It's really sad, isn't it? I've actually been trying to stay away because it makes me angry. some of the stuff I see and the ignorant stuff that you see. And I just, as far as Donald Trump is concerned, I can't, like, why hasn't someone taken away this man's phone? Why has this not happened? Why is this okay?
See, but it's not just Trump. Like Trump, that's a nightmare. He should have his phone taken away. He should be put to bed without a story. Just get out of here. But I'm talking about everybody else. Like we cannot control the methods. Individuals are doing a terrible job at controlling the methods of information delivery. All sorts of fake information is being thrown around. We had Pizzagate happen last week, where a guy stormed into a pizza place hoping to catch Hillary Clinton in the act of molesting children or something. Like, talk about testing for intellectual rigor.
And John Podesta worshiping the devil. And I think I mentioned I was actually on my bus back from New York. I was with the guy's father, the Pizzagate father. But you know, Janina, you're engaging with the substance of Chris's argument. What I love about it is the verb cancel. It sounds like a Bernie Sanders policy platform. Like, what's the path to canceling social media, Chris? Like, what does that look like?
I imagine there's a big red button in a room somewhere, and you just you hit it with like a cartoon mallet, and then like everything just goes dead. No, I mean, I'm being facetious, but I'm also being a little serious. Like, I don't think we actually asked ourselves the question, like, what can this sort of thing do? Like, how can this bring us low? And I just think, I mean, maybe not canceling it, but we have to stop its proliferation. Have to stop. I mean, that's a bit directed and dramatic, but.
Well, I think the beauty of it all is your social media page is yours and you can control what you see and what you choose not to see. So for me, you know, if you see someone on your Twitter timeline and they're just constantly an idiot, you get rid of them. It doesn't solve the problem, but I can't control what anybody else does anyway, so I can get rid of them out of my life. And that's enough for me.
But what if, and this is an actual thought I had today, what if I started a fake news story about how, you know, Donald Trump caught kissing Putin's feet, and I photoshopped a picture, and I spread that around, and all the electors saw it next week, and they all voted for Hillary Clinton, and then she's president.
Well, why don't you try that?
Hold on a second. I'll be right back.
Just embrace the post-factual world we
I
live in.
hear a familiar laugh. Do we have a new? Did someone join the podcast?
I think it's a former host.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Who's this? Who's this?
Of course, it's Team Trecia.
Hired, Trecia.
Oh, you've met Janina.
Yes. Janina was happy to fill in for you, and she's going to be getting your paycheck for this episode. So,
oh shit, Chris pays? Wait a minute, real?
Yeah.
Yeah, that check for $2.45.
Yeah. We split
Hey,
it.
I haven't gotten any money. Where's my $2.45?
The split on this podcast is 80%, 10%, 10%. We just decided we formalized that today.
All by Chris. So sorry,
Janina.
y'all. Welcome.
Oh, someone
Janina.
said, I hope fake Trish can hang. Apparently, they've never listened to the Real Tennis Fans podcast. I'm just saying.
So again, if you follow the link, you can if you're on the YouTube page, you can join the chat that is blowing up at this moment. Janina, is there anything else you want to say? Any questions you want to ask before we say goodbye to you? We have to catch up with Trecia. It's been a minute.
Yeah, but I feel like,
that's
Janina,
fine.
we didn't give you the opportunity to, like, I mean, why? I'm sure you didn't just want to come on.
Well, you know, Chris, I want to know why you're so mean.
Oh my God.
Do I need an
That's
answer
not
to
a
this?
legitimate
Because-
question that
but it
I feel
is.
like I have to answer.
Well, you do, because we're here, and I know that you and Trecia are the best of friends, and she's amazing. So that means you must be amazing, or she wouldn't like you.
Okay, that is absolutely true. Yes, I am.
And-
incredible.
I can't always like you when I listen to the podcast. You make me very angry.
Me?
Yes.
I'm always so
Oh.
agreeable.
I'm going to pop some popcorn. Hold on, please.
Okay. How am I mean? How am I mean?
You're very attacking.
Oh.
You attack. Maybe it's
Isn't it more
passion. I don't know,
You're
but
confusing passion.
It's not. It's just arrogance. I don't think it's.
is that what it
passion.
is? It's
just
arrogance.
Wow. You know what, Nina?
No.
I mean,
thank
because
so
you know
much for
what, Real
calling
says,
in.
Real says that you're nice too, and I'm like, I gotta meet him in person, I guess.
You know what? That's never happening now because you made a terrible first impression.
You know what though? I think Chris takes his role as Taskmaster really seriously. You know what I mean? And so maybe
Someone's got to
that's how
steer
it
this
comes.
fucking ship. People show up late.
I
Jason
know.
had tech problems right before we started this. Listen, there's one adult on this podcast.
But
Well,
I want
No, but
to
Janina, in all seriousness, I'm not mean. I'm very passionate about the things that we're talking about. And maybe it's, the three of us, me, Trecia, and Jason, have been having conversations like this for almost 2 decades, the three of us together. And like, we know that there's no malice here. At least I hope. I don't think Jason and Trecia are walking around thinking I'm mean. Most of the time,
just
they
me.
dismiss the fuck out of my ideas.
I'm wondering if I'm just being passive. Maybe I should be fighting back more against you, Chris.
You know what?
Definitely
I do
fighting
not like
back.
this narrative at all.
Well, hey
Janina, do you have
guys,
anything else
thanks
to
for
add
having
before we
me
hang up?
on.
Well, never again.
Well,
Janina,
I
thanks for
mean-
being here.
Well, wait. Before Janina goes, did you all sort of cover any kind of general, what's been on your mind this week, Janina, in the world of news, or no? What?
You know what? This week, I can't even say this week. Since election day, honestly, I've tried to stay away because I just had this conversation earlier with somebody else. I cannot read something and think about it for a minute and walk away. I go all in. So I got to either go all in or just stay away. And I've had to stay away. I've had to just stay away.
Is that going to be your approach post Trump?
No,
in this Trumpian
I
world.
need a mental break.
Mm-hmm.
So that's still where I am.
You think you're gonna get off? Because this is a question I've been seeing people. I've seen a couple of people talk about how are they going to kind of live in a sort of Trump universe, and do you think you're gonna re-engage though, or do you feel like you have to? Because some people feel like they're just gonna put their head in the sand for a while and just kind of.
No, I won't do that. I mean, I have to because I like to know what's going on. I can't just pretend like nothing's happening, no matter how horrible it might all become. But for now, I gotta back off.
Maybe like a holiday break and before you ramp up and come ready.
I'll come back when I have to come back to the tennis. I'll come back to the world.
But I have to say though,
January?
but Janina, what's a break gonna do? Like, how do you prepare for something like the series finale of America, which is going to start broadcasting January 20th?
I didn't say that I was going to be prepared. I just said I need a mental break.
Okay, fair.
Just a rest.
She's going to store up. She's going to give ourselves a lot of a lot of vitamins.
Right.
Do a cleanse. Do a fast.
Yeah.
Well, Janina, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Janina.
Thank you for filling
Thanks
in
for
Tricia
letting
at
me
the
come
last
on.
second.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's talk off air just in case we do need to move in a different direction with the podcast. If you know what I mean.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Janina, thank you, Janina.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, Janina.
That was great.
Oh boy, she's great, huh?
Fun.
Really-
That was
So
really
Trish, what's your LA story? What was the traffic doing?
Oh my God. Sorry. I gave myself 90 minutes to get home. It wasn't long. It wasn't enough.
Oh my God,
I really-
that's kind of crazy though.
Yeah, I mean, my work is 12 miles away from me, but 90 minutes was still not enough time. So, unfortunately,
crazy.
so I was like, I had to do a quick text and say, traffic is hell right now. So I'm experiencing the full LA experience. So I'm happy to be back though. I missed y'all. So let's get into it.
Yeah, we had to start the show without you,
okay.
and no one was listening because let's face it, you're the headliner, and we're just we're Effie and that other girl from Dreamgirls. So.
We can go.
Well, we're already going, honey. It's been
We've been
going
live
for
a
20
half
minutes.
hour, Tricia. we did
All
actually
right.
start without you. We didn't want to completely let everyone down.
No, it's
we
okay.
did. People. So the only thing you missed so far is that we talked about Alan Thicke dying. So
I saw
can see
that. I didn't
I'm watching the chat page, and one of our listeners, Cordell, wants us to
Mhm.
talk more about Alan Thicke. So what are your impressions of Alan Thicke?
Well, I mean, I'm sort of upset that he gave us a son that is kind of crazy, but that's about
Not
it.
related to Kirk Cameron.
No, I meant the other one.
She means Robin Thicke. Wait, why is he crazy? I haven't heard that. Why would you call him
Robin Thicke? He sings rapey songs and he steals lyrics. No, you know what? Actually, I have to sort of ponder Alan Thicke, because Alan Thicke is kind of like, my only context for Alan Thicke is really as TV dad. No.
Also, he wrote a lot of theme songs for shows. I think correct me, internet. I think he wrote the theme song for Full House.
Yeah, he did. And he sang it.
Okay.
And he sang it. But I mean, that's my only context for Alan Thicke. I don't know any, I mean, other than the fact that he's one of the few TV dads that didn't fall into disrepute out of some dodgy offline thing. I think he's probably just holding it down for TV dads everywhere. Bill Cosby, we're looking at you.
No, we're not.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about him either. I
just think 69 is young to go. That's all. And also to die while your kids are watching.
Yeah, no, that's terrible.
Yeah, think about that as you go to bed tonight, Jason. Good night.
Thanks.
Well, I mean, I think his death seems like a little bit of a shock, on par with like a John Ritter, right? In the way that it was.
Oh, that made me so sad.
Yeah.
What celebrity deaths were you like, oh my God, what celebrity deaths actually affected you?
Yeah, I make fun of people about this, but yeah, there are a few celebrity deaths where I feel like I'm connecting to some element of some aspect of who they were, which in some sense is probably just like a retroactive. I'm connecting to some aspect of myself. Yeah. So
that's deep.
I think Whitney Houston, because I'm not a big music buyer, but there are very few albums that I've bought in my life, and Whitney Houston is definitely one of those people. I actually had like a 8-track album for her, so I think her death was just kind of like a little bit of I felt like I grew up with her, so I remember her on the scene early, and I've sort of been through her journey. Prince, but not because I was necessarily attached to him musically, but more just because I think he represented a kind of freedom that I like seeing on a person of color. And Michael Jackson, really. Michael Jackson, because I was out of the country. And
so the trifecta of Black 80s. Yeah.
Yes.
Jason, what about you?
Wait, the trifecta of what?
Black 80s.
Black 80s music.
80s. Oh, it's great that you asked that question, because I think what you started to say at the beginning, Tricia, I feel the same way. I feel like I've had major responses to the deaths. I mean, like when Michael Jackson died, I mean, it was a shock, and it really caused me to like look back at like what, how much of a genius he was in certain ways. But like, I don't feel like I had like, an emotional reaction. I remember when David Bowie died, and there's just like really emotionally connected, and I didn't totally get it. I will say, like, I felt probably the artist that comes to mind is Fife Dog.
Yeah, I'm thinking that because you did talk about him.
Yeah, and especially because of the timing, because it was right at like the 25th anniversary of Tribe Called Quest's first album, and the fact that he died of diabetes at a very young age was like, wow, that sucked. What about you, Chris?
I would have to agree with Tricia. The Black trilogy, Trinity, right there was my thing. I remember I was in a park. I was outside on the east side when Michael Jackson died, because I'm sitting in a park watching some kids play, and everyone's phone went off at the same time. It was creepy. Like, the park was full. It was a really nice, warm day, and everyone took out their phones at the same time. And I remember thinking, and then people were like, Michael Jackson. I was like, what? Oh my God. And the news spread like wildfire. And then I was in a restaurant when Whitney Houston died. And Prince, I don't remember where I was, but I just because I didn't believe it right away. So I spent like a good hour not believing it. But yeah, those three, I think for Black people in the 80s, like those three, like Michael Jackson was like a member of your family. Like you went into a Black person's home, like Black people of a certain age, they had like Michael Jackson's Thriller, like up on the wall next to pictures of their kids. You know what I mean? Like it was displayed like he was a member of the family. And to some degree, the same thing with Whitney Houston's first album. Like it was just such a huge deal.
I think her first album, debuted at #1, which was like unprecedented. Her first album, I remember like every song was a hit. Every song was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. The thing with another artist that comes to mind that I didn't have any personal reaction to, but I feel like Chris, you and I met around the time that Kurt Cobain committed suicide, and that was like a thing.
Really? Oh, we did. Didn't
That
we?
was
It was in the early
thing with
90s.
the kids we were working with. Like, I wasn't a huge Nirvana fan.
We had to
appreciated the
address
music.
it.
Yeah, we had to address it, and like there was, kids were kind of glorifying it. It was like, oh, he wanted to die. He had said that in one of his songs, and now he killed himself. And I just remember that being like a big presence, although I didn't have like a personal connection to it. But they're like really tragic. Like, I think one of the differences, like he was at the peak of his career.
Mm-hmm.
And committed suicide. Not to say any other deaths are less tragic, but like that just seems really rare, right? Like someone's at the peak of their career, very young, and to die that way, that was pretty crazy.
I wasn't connected to him, but I remember thinking to myself that, I think what's interesting about celebrities is sort of the question of like what they represent to you and what kind of a narrative you build around them. And I think for somebody like a Kurt Cobain, there was such a strong narrative around his kind of emotional life for people who enjoyed his music and his genius.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed like when he killed himself, right, that it was like, there's the tragic end to that strain of personality, to that kind of narrative. So then it begs the question, can people who really related to him, are they going to be able to triumph over the evils or the challenges that he struggled with, right? And I think in some ways, for me, the trifecta of Black artists I named, I think they all represent sort of these kind of iconographic lives that's possible for Black people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet they're kind of cut short in a certain way, right? So for me, it's like
they all died of the same cause, right? I just thought,
on some level, right? Pain medication, taken to some extreme.
Drugs, and more drugs.
Legal drugs, though. That's what's really interesting.
Exactly.
All of them died of legal drug overdoses.
I don't mean to sound callous, but like, I remember even at the time when Kurt Cobain died, in my head, I was like, well, there was really no other way that story was going to end.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with Amy Winehouse. Like, not that I was like, oh, they're dead. Like, who cares, whatever. Like, I recognize that a human life is over, but how is that story really going to end? Same thing with poor Amy Winehouse was doing it in the public space. And I want to say, Kanye West is also having his mental health crisis in public view. And I just think it's sad. It's sad. How is that story going to end? Like, we've seen this before, but there's nothing to do to stop it, I guess. We'll just continue to be entertained until he's in the grave.
Can I ask the question, though? I mean, what do you think is actually at work there? Like, the Kanye West one, since you brought it up, and he has met with our fearless president-elect. What are we supposed to do with a personality like Kanye West that's on my screen and on my, like, I just ignore him because I don't have any context for taking him really seriously. But I mean, are we supposed to do something with him in a more useful way than others? I don't know. I really don't.
I mean, you know what? Imagine that you had a cousin, right? Imagine you had like a teenage cousin who your aunt was struggling with because he was bipolar and he was having a really hard time, and your family was like really like distraught about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, think about how you would feel about that and how you would take care of your family member. The problem with celebrities, when they have their mental health crisis, it all just feeds into the entertainment industry that they're already a part of. Like, the Kardashians had a meeting talking about how much money they can make off the fact that he is decompensating in real life. Like, it's not going to help him. I mean, I think we had this conversation a while back, but we just need to think about mental health differently. I don't care about Kanye West. Like he was never on my radar, but now I just feel bad for him because I feel like he's suffering from something.
Mhm.
The president-elect, that's not going to go well. Could you imagine if someone had like bipolar or was delusional and you ushered them in to meet the future president? Like that's what people's delusions are made of, that they know the president. Like I don't know. It's very sad. I think it's really sad.
Well, I mean, I think this is part of the challenge of having a mediated experience, is that all aspects of it become part of the machine, right? So there's no point in time where you can sort of turn it off, right? And so for me, I'm like, I can't engage you because I don't really know what aspect of you to take seriously. And the meeting of the president-elect further sort of challenges me, because I'm like, what is the conversation that he's having with you that is of merit to me as a citizen? Because that's the only relationship I want to have with Donald Trump, is as a citizen. So does he represent some sort of artistic endeavor? Like, is this about, he said, well, I'm doing this because
you're
it's about
desperate to read something into that meeting.
No, I'm not saying it's even valuable. I'm not saying I'm desperate to read anything in it, but it's like, I feel like it's presented as something that I'm supposed to consume, and I just would rather not consume it. But then that also feels really dismissive, So I'm always trying to figure out, well, I've just put it to the side and say, well, unless you're going to be appointed to run the NEA or some such thing, I'm not going to take you seriously. But that feels like every single person that has been appointed to Trump's cabinet. Like, I want to take them seriously, but it's almost like they're a contradiction of the actual cabinet office.
Yeah, I find it sad that on the same day that Kanye visited with Donald Trump, it was also announced that his Secretary of State would be this Tillerson person who was like Putin's boyfriend at some summer camp at some point. But and then also what's his name? What's that dick from Texas?
Oh,
that he was going to be.
Perry is going to be.
He was going to be the Secretary of Energy when he wanted to dismantle it. Like, but the Kanye thing got so many more headlines, which is why, cancel social media. I'm telling you.
We're back to canceling social media.
Cancel social media.
Oh, well.
No, there's an interest. I don't know if we want to go down this rabbit hole, but I'm just listening to you two talk about the appointments. And, we know, I think there's been a significant portion of the population, and the argument I'm about to lay out is the one that's been made by many conservatives and Republicans for quite a long time now, that, if we just got rid of a lot of regulations and, put job growth above all other things, including environment and whatnot, like, we would have a really robust economy, wages would go up, etc. I feel like that this is the first time that is going to be like truly tested. I mean, he has appointed to all these positions. I mean, super pro business folks that are, have been publicly anti-regulation. And
no, this is not the first time this is going to be tested. Did you read Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein?
I read excerpts. I heard interviews.
We've done this in South America, and it was a nightmare. When,
what do you mean in South America?
I don't have the details, and because we're doing this without editing, usually I edit this. So Trecia and I'm like, we know exactly what we're talking about, but actually fumble for like 2.5 hours, and we just cut the best 90 minutes. But anyway,
I don't do that.
Yeah, you do.
Nope. So I don't.
Anyway, my point being is that in Shock Doctrine they talk. I think it was more about unrestrained capitalism, but removing all sorts of regulations, allowing companies to have greater and greater control over the markets, and it was an absolute disaster. Like, it ended up with mysterious murders, people being disappeared.
Right. No, but what I'm saying is in the United States, we've heard this argument for a long time, and this has been, a major conflict. I mean, this has been a big conflict between Democrats and Republicans, where, I mean, Republicans have said, we've got, we have all these natural resources, we have, a populace that wants to work, and if we could just put aside climate change, put aside, all that stuff, we would have like an economy that grows so much faster than we do. that's been the argument. I understand that there are other places where it's been done, but and it's not like we haven't had pro-business administrations before. But I mean, in this case, where the Secretary of State is not a diplomat, right, is a business person. The Secretary of Energy, of Energy is someone, Rick Perry. Like it, I mean, it's going to be interesting, right? Like in 2 years, if the economy is not growing by gangbusters, I feel like that's gonna answer a question. And I mean, I'm not saying it's the only question. I think a lot of us have concerns about the environment and other things, but just this theory, this hypothesis that's been put out many times with conviction that if we got rid of all this stuff and put jobs first and regulations and climate, all that, forget about that for a while, we would have such a fast growing economy. Like, we're really going to see whether that's the case.
Well, but as a listener just said in the chat, like, we've seen this before. This was the housing crisis, wasn't it? Let's remove all regulations and experience some sort of boom. And the exact opposite happened, and that took down, that we lost a lot of money. It ended a lot of jobs and it shifted the industry. So for us to not even 10 years later, for us to be turning around being like, hey, let's remove regulations again. How did we end up here again? Like, what do you think is going to happen? So yes, if we can, quote unquote, put aside climate change and grow our economy, to what purpose if we're all underwater in 60 years?
I agree. I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying that I think, like, more than any other administration, if you look at, there's lots of very valid fears and trepidation about, who's Trump going to appoint and that kind of thing. And I think what we're seeing for the most part is it's a bunch of very pro-business, very pro-drill, harvest, like all of that. That's totally, climate change is a hoax. Like, that's really what we're seeing. That, to me, that seems to be the overriding commonality among the people that he's appointing. So I don't disagree with you, Chris. I mean, I have the same fears you do, but I just think, like, in 2 years, no one's going to be able to say, well, we haven't really tried, like, stacking the government with, like, super pro-business types. Like, Trump's doing it like no one's done it before.
Well, can I ask the question of what about an arena where business is traditionally not the thing that you think about when you are exploring how to do it well? Say education.
Charter schools, that's absolutely business that infiltrated that system.
But I mean, I think people don't tend to think of charter schools as a business model.
Well, and most charters are not for profit. Just to be
they're not, right? You know what I mean? So,
but they operate as if they were. I mean, that's the point, because it's more about philosophy than philosophy and practice. Like, the idea that we think that the business-minded person or a business-minded philosophy will enhance every system it touches. I do not know how that myth continues to gain
resonate
power
with people.
I don't know how that continues to resonate.
Well, and it's so funny because I think there was I think I talked about this maybe a couple of weeks ago when Barack Obama was giving a talk, I guess in Silicon Valley somewhere. And he was making the case for why kind of business intervention isn't the end all and be all, because what a business requires is so different than what you would expect from the government. Like,
of course,
a business, if you are failing at your job, as a business, I can fire you. I can't fire a citizen. Like, I can't say to you as
Trump
citizen,
will find a way. Well, didn't he say, like, if you burn the flag, he'll cancel your citizenship?
I mean,
that
fits
revoke your citizenship.
Right.
I'm not making that up, people.
Yeah, but that fits into that model. Like, the idea is that in some ways, in terms of like in terms of this kind of model that people seem to really like, everything is instrumental. So you as a human being, any output that comes from you has to have some sort of end in mind. And if it doesn't have an end, then there's no value to it. So if you bring, I can see where that might naturally make sense in certain industries. Energy, although quite a bit of the work that traditionally gets done by government is research. Right? It's really sort of like, I mean, research and development, really exploring questions that a business doesn't have time to explore because they have to be in the business of making money. You don't really necessarily expect the federal government or any kind of government to be situated in making money. You're exploring how to make something better, how to be more effective, how to serve the citizenry better. But with people coming in having a business mindset, I just don't understand. I mean, does that mean that maybe the DMV will work better?
Well, I feel like I have a little bit a more nuanced thinking about this, and this doesn't. What I'm about to say is not me showing support for the appointments, but just this concept we're discussing about business. So, first of all, there's a great book, Jim Collins' Good to Great, about businesses.
Yes, you love that book.
It's so good, and he like many years after he put out the book, and I really think it's a great book. He put out a pamphlet focused on the social sector, and it begins, and I'm going to paraphrase because I don't remember the exact quote, but it begins with something to the effect of, a lot of people say that nonprofit organizations and churches and government would work better business, but I disagree because most businesses aren't run very well. And I love that quote. Now, I agree with you that there is this mindset, and I think it's a lot of the reason why a lot of people voted for Donald Trump, that if we just ran government like a business, everything would be fine. And I agree with what you're saying, and Obama said, that government is structured very differently, has different demands, different needs, different purpose. The one thing I will say that, and this doesn't have to be limited to business, but the thing is, what does happen in business is that if you run inefficiently, you run out of money and you go out of business. So there is a built-in accountability to outcomes. And I do think, and this is, it's a passion of mine working in education, I do think what happens in a lot, not all, but a lot of situations in government is that because there's not that built-in accountability, then there are a lot of government agencies or departments that the outcomes are not met, and we continue to fund them and they continue to operate in the same way. I mean, look, I know people who work in local and state government who tell me, and I mean, there's someone I know like right now in a local government job who's like, no one in my department works. Like, people are on social media, like it's a jobs program. And I'm not against jobs programs, but taxpayers are paying money for a certain outcome in many cases, and you do have this problem if there's not any accountability and some accountability system is not injected into the system. You do run the risk of inefficiency without the built-in accountability that a business has. That's the one way in which, now I agree that that's not. I think there's much more to what's going on with Trump's appointments, but I don't think there's nothing to be learned from business when it comes to government.
I think it's bullshit, though. I really do. Because
Damn. Oh, wait. Janina, am I still the mean one?
I know.
Listen to Trecia. Get him, Trecia.
No. Well, I think it's bullshit because the reality is most of the people who voted, quote unquote, voted for Trump because of economic anxiety, they are expecting Trump to return jobs that make no sense. So, and the only place, so in some ways, if we really bought into the idea of business leading to better outcomes because of sort of increased efficiency, and that in some ways we really let the market decide, that's bullshit. Because
that's not what I said. I did not say that at all.
But that's part of the outcomes model. The outcomes model is the expectation that businesses don't have any kind of corporate welfare built into it. That certain industries aren't propped up and allowed to continue to exist because supposedly they're delivering an outcome. I just want to be clear. You're taking it another direction. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but what I'm saying is, in business, in industries that are not propped up, businesses that don't achieve their outcomes and or run inefficiently fail. They don't though. They don't though. The assumption is that
no businesses go out of business.
No, businesses go out of business. However, you can be the entire agriculture business is propped up.
Well, no, I agree. Money. I'm not saying you can't be propped up.
About.
But
I almost think you're Yeah, I'm not talking about that at all.
No, but what I'm saying though, Jason, is that assumption that you're raising, which is that's a true business assumption, that when if a business is failing to thrive, it will go out of business. That's on some level that's true, but most businesses and a lot of businesses are propped up.
Well,
no,
they fail.
I think. Wait,
Trisha,
you're making a point, but you didn't let Jason finish his point, which is why Jason finished what you were saying.
He already made his point.
I'm okay. No, I'm
already
okay.
made his
I'm
point.
okay
He
with
had already made his
Trisha,
point.
but it is not most. It is
I'm
powerful
most
interests.
businesses fail.
Most businesses fail.
The business that you're talking about, Trisha, that's part of the problem. But I think what it is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, what you're saying that if we applied this business idea to other models and the consequences were the same as it is for most businesses, right? But then things might be different. But there are no consequences, which is what Trisha's saying, is that so you have like the agricultural complex.
Right.
It's run like a business, but it can't fail. So it's not succeeding anywhere.
Or banking can't fail because
exactly.
You know what I mean? So it's like this idea.
Well, big banks can't fail. You have to be clear.
Your neighborhood bank can fail. It's by failing in this moment.
But that's what I mean, though. But what I'm saying is that I totally buy into the idea that left to their own devices, certain industries and certain businesses, you're right, they do kind of have a natural cycle of this is no longer working, out of business. However, that's what people usually use to sell you on the notion of business. Like, oh, if it's not working, it's just going to go out of business and the market has decided. But what we have all figured out is that very rarely does the market get to truly decide. Very rarely is sort of the free reign of the market going. Sometimes businesses are propped up with tax breaks. They're propped up in this way. They have just as much kind of dead weight in their running as other spaces. So I just get tired of the assumption of government being the only place where there's dead weight. I think, and I think people sell that vision often enough that I really do think that that's one of the downsides of saying a government is going to take over something. People go, uh-oh, because I think really that is the idea. The idea is that the government is essentially a lead weight. And that all businesses in some ways are more efficient and more effective at like getting rid of people who are sort of dead weight. I don't know how many times you've gone to a job and you're sitting there and I'd say 70% of the time, maybe you're working efficiently. Maybe I'm stretching, maybe 40, but the business has room for that and it gives you room for that. But if you suddenly say the same thing in a government space, people start judging it. They're like, well, see, that's why those jobs need to go. Like, I don't understand how that sort of cutthroat attitude is allowed to kind of remain unchallenged. Just because we see businesses failing all the time doesn't necessarily mean that that's a legitimate myth to continue to give business. Because I think that's why people do vote for somebody who's a business person. They're like, let's bring business into education. Let's bring business here.
Bring business everywhere. Let's bring business into
I agree.
charity.
I think the idea of it as a panacea, I totally agree with you.
But I get your drift that there's a thing where it ends and you're like, whoop, nobody wanted those kind of tacos. There goes your stand.
What?
You know what I mean? Like, there goes your taco stand.
Right.
Nobody wants it. You know what I mean? But I think it's a little bit of an illusion that although apparently that's what the American consumer wanted. The American consumer wanted all banks to have been allowed to fail. Well,
I mean, yes and no, right? I mean, same thing with the automakers, like yes and no, like they did, but they didn't.
But isn't that some of the source of this populist rage?
What, that we didn't let banks fail?
That we didn't let industries fail. That we didn't let people really felt like Wall Street got to sort of walk away.
Well, they did. I'm not an economist.
People wanted Wall Street to fail?
No, I mean, they thought that Wall Street was like a willful child that went out and partied hard. And then we came in and rescued them. And then they got to sort of leave without feeling the real pinch. Except in many ways, what happened was many of the banks that received loans from the government paid back the loans with interest. But somehow that wasn't punitive enough.
Well, and I think, you hear these stories of this bank lost all this money, did this illegal stuff, and the CEO's salary went up and, is making a crazy amount of money. Like, that's a narrative that I think, people feel sharply. I don't know enough about that whole world to have a sense of, some people say we should have let the banks that were failing just fail and not give them government loans or any of that. Other people say if you had done that, it actually would have harmed the common person even more. I don't know enough to have an opinion about that, but I can understand, even though it's like you could take all the CEO's bonuses and you wouldn't have enough to like raise the standard of living for all the people in the country. But I can understand people's frustration where you hear all this horrible thing about this bank, the CEO's making more money than ever, and you're like out of a job. Like, I get why that's frustrating. I don't know the solution, but I get why it's frustrating.
So we are going to bring on another listener. Caller, are you there?
I am here, and usually, can I do this on this podcast? I guess I can. So I'm not rude when I come to someplace. So I usually ring the doorbell.
Oh my God. Hi, do you want to identify yourself?
Yes, I am real. I let you borrow Andrine every now and again to host this podcast.
Oh, shit. Everyone from the other podcast is like coming over here.
Well, I enjoy Andrine in many different spaces. I am team everyone, but since Chris is getting
lying. You're lying.
I am Chris tonight.
You're team Chris?
I'm team Chris tonight. Yes.
Oh my God, no one's ever team Chris.
Oh Lord.
Explain why. I am team rolling my eyes at Jason all the time.
Wow.
Wow. We have some. Let's get into this conflict.
I know.
And
what's the source of your rage? What's the source of your rage right now?
Well, I guess tonight. I think people. I don't know. Like, first of all, let me just say before I start quote unquote criticizing and hating, this is a very, really good podcast. I do love it.
Oh, thank you.
It comes a very close second to my podcast, but
Jesus.
My podcast
can't compliment us and then plug your own podcast.
So since my podcast deals with sports scene, and since this is a dirty word in this arena, your podcast is the greatest. I love it. Your podcast is the best. Okay,
sports thing.
Thank you.
Sports thing. And don't be calling her Andrine and her diva doll hatred. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks.
That's a private conversation. But it's a really good podcast, and as three friends, and they're discussing, and there's a lot of nuance and there's a lot of different perspectives, and a lot of times, there are arenas or issues that are brought up that I didn't even think about, and also topics that I'm just like, oh my God, I didn't even think of that topic. So I really enjoyed it. Tonight's conversation, I think, is rather interesting. No, we are not going to rehash Alan Thicke. I'm sorry, rest in.
Yeah, tell us how you feel about Alan Thicke's sudden passing.
Yeah, why do you care?
Yeah, what are your thoughts and feelings?
Yeah, so in regards to Chris, sorry, not Chris, Jason. Sometimes I mix you all. I don't know why, but anyway. Jason,
I'm the smarter one. Whenever it's smarter, that's me. That's Jason.
This is the most aggressive podcast
you cannot
ever.
Call you children motherfuckers. You just can't. The optics is not good. The optics should never be good.
Oh my God! You come on the podcast and that's what you want to tell us about.
Anyway, I just gotta say that. This is why, because sometimes Jason says something, and I'm with Chris. I'm with Chris all the time. It's just like, Jason, you can't say that. That's crazy. So. Maybe that's why I'm always team Chris. Can I blow up your spot real quickly? Because your spot, because I know that you listened to the last episode, and in our conversation about Issa Rae and the N-word, I know you have opinions about it.
Yes,
did you want to air them here? Well, I'm with Andre. I don't use the N-word. And
by the way, for our listeners, Andrine is Trecia.
Sorry,
we call her Trecia.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. We call her Trecia because of various, she's on the run in several states. But anyway, go on.
Trecia. So I'm with Trecia. I mean, like, I don't use it in whether social or even public arena. But I mean, I understand the context within the show, like how it's being used there. I mean, it's, it doesn't, I don't think when it's being used in that context, there is any sort of like, I guess, racial overtone. And I guess you mentioned this, Chris, like, there is no action behind it, okay? No one's gonna tell Issa Rae and telling her friend, nigga, please. And then she's just like, clean that floor, bitch. There is
it doesn't have to involve action for it to feel negative?
No, but I mean, like, there is just nothing, there is no
weight of negative thought. Okay.
Of negative thought behind it. It's just like, and it's kind of like a sort of I don't want to say it's a new thing, but it's sort of like it's relatively new in relation to when the word was being used historically. That this phenomenon for it being used amongst in this way, in which is social construct waves in the African American community, is a sort of relatively new manner of which we are experienced, I guess I would say. But I think on a larger point, I mean, like, it doesn't affect them the same way it does when a white person tells that true thing. Because I know the conversation.
Well, this is what I was trying to explain to Jason, but he didn't want to listen to me.
And also, I think, the question that pops up, just like white people then say, like, why can't I use it? And I keep asking, can you tell me a sentence when you think it will be okay, where even necessary for you to tell a black person use the N-word towards a black person?
No, can I just tell you, I totally agree. Whenever I hear that argument from white people, like, well, why can't we say it? Like, I always want to be like, let's dig into why you're such a strong desire to say it. Why is that so important to you? There's got to be something very interesting in there. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I had a friend and he was trying to explain that to me, and he then, when he was trying to have a sentence and he was then using the word monkey, I'm just like, stop, that cannot be okay. Like, there's no circumstances the optics would never look right. So just let it go. I mean, like, not everything is for you. You just can't get everything in this world.
Yeah, like Beyonce's Lemonade. Not for everybody.
Look, I know I could never rock a pair of acid wash jeans, and I'm not even mad at that. Just let it go. I'm not, just everything isn't for everyone, and just let it go. But I think in tonight's podcast discussion, Jason, I think you mentioned something about, that even if you add up all the CEOs' bonuses, it's not gonna pay for everyone in the country. My problem, it isn't that is the issue. My problem is that when you're in that company, that the CEO is making all this fucking money, and the people who work in that company are making nothing. They still are scrambling to get by. They're living paycheck to paycheck. So that would alleviate some of the issues we have here. And also, I think you brought up, like, I guess you're trying to make an argument, or I don't know, a pitch for, Trump's approach and whatever, but it's bullshit. Businessmen are always greedy. Humans are always greedy. Without constraint, they will eat and destroy everything. I mean, how long have we been talking about the environment, and we don't even want to act like it's actually real to fix the environment.
Even though we see it falling apart around us slowly, we still refuse to acknowledge.
There's so much money to be made. You even discussed this with the pipeline, and it's just like, there is money there, so no one is going to really want to do anything, but because there's too much money to be made at the top. So these same people are the ones running the business, are running the country, and they're running the businesses. Do you think they're going to be looking out for the little man when they're running their business? So they don't even take care of the little man. I mean, this country doesn't even have a comprehensive health care plan. So that just tells you how businessmen feel about people on a whole, just the general public. So yeah, them running the country, no, it's not going to end well. There's no way this situation is going to end well.
I agree with everything you're saying, and I the only point I was trying to make is I think there's one thing from business that government can learn, but I think the idea of CEOs running the whole government. I totally agree with you. I mean, if I think about summing up the United States, it seems like it's been an experiment of, if we let people pursue self-interest unfettered, does that make for a better country? I think the answer is no, but I feel like that's what we see. That's the logic behind the current.
But is that what American experiment is? I mean,
well, I think at the founding of it was. I mean, it was
I was about
life,
to
liberty, and the pursuit of property.
This is not my show, but I mean, no, I'm sorry. America has always been about, let's try to exploit someone else. We don't want to be the ones exploited. The founding fathers just like, we don't want to be the one being exploited. We don't want to be the victim of exploitation here. We want to exploit other people. It's never been about freedom. It's never been about equality. It's about, let's get as much as we can get and exploit someone else for this situation.
No, I mean, again, that's the same thing. I agree. That's the pursuit of self-interest unfettered, regardless of who.
For few, but it isn't self-interest. It's the self-interest of a select group of people, not for everyone. We all can't go out and pursue our own self-interest per se, because there are restrictions on many of us of which space we can inhibit, where we can go, where the accolade, the path to the success. Not all of us have access to that, and that's how it's been in American society. But that's just me being pessimistic. But on the whole, I love the show.
Great.
Something else you mentioned this evening, if I remember right. Yeah.
Was it about Alan Thicke?
No.
Why are you guys laughing? He's dead. Oh my God. You guys are monsters.
And God rest his soul, and my condolences to his family, but this is not the place or time for him. And as for Conway, yes, I remember it now. There's an issue you keep bringing up about how we consume media and ways in which we can. I don't know if Chris, it does sound sexy to cancel social media, but that is some of us just need to be aware so that we can try to make an exit somewhere somehow. I mean, we know a lot of people are gonna just be caught up in the bullshit, but some of us need to be informed, and social media does provide that platform for us. But we do need to change in which we consume it. Andre, I think you made a really good suggestion on Monday's podcast about the website. You suggested how we can probably question how we look at things, and I guess for me, it's always been what I do, because I guess I have a degree in literature, so I just don't read something and be like, oh, this is just facts. Let's take it for what it is. I'm constantly questioning. But as for Kanye West, I've never been a hip hop fan, but I just gotta ask myself, it's just like Chris, you mentioned the analogy of like your family member, but you're not gonna be having any serious discussion with your family member who is bipolar. Yes. You're gonna try to you're not gonna be having any substantive discussion. You're not gonna be like, what are we gonna do with grandma? Bipolar cousin. You're not gonna have that conversation. So that whole scheme that was happening here, and the fact that none of his handlers decided, Kanye, you can't go in this space. You need to be in a hospital resting.
I think that's what my metaphor was about. My metaphor was about, like, if that was your bipolar cousin, you would be the handler, and you would interact, you would help them interface with like school or job or whatever they need. Like, so that was where my metaphor was coming from. Meanwhile, Kanye West, because of the industry that he's in, the people around him, his quote unquote family in this metaphor, are they make money off of him.
Right. But you know what?
And they can't be trusted to protect him.
But also, it's not even that. I mean, the thing that's also interesting and challenging is that we have a president-elect that thought that was a good move. Do you know what I mean? Like,
but it is a good.
But I mean, yes, obviously a good move given the way that President-elect Trump conducts himself. But can you imagine Obama thinking that it would be a good idea to meet with Kanye? If that even came up. Yeah, if that even came up as an option, he would have said, you know what? That man has just been through some really challenging moments. I'm going to let him go and have that. It's just, there's just a way that, like, I almost feel like in some ways the problem I'm having is that Trump does not conduct himself with the gravitas of that position. And he didn't do it during the campaign, and I get that. But it's like,
So where's your surprise?
I'm not surprised.
what are you
I'm
saying
not
about it?
surprised by it. But I'm just consistently shocked that people wanted to have this man run the country.
Well, I mean,
I mean,
don't
that's
know.
the part of it that not us. People chose this man who thought it was a good idea to have this meeting, even as he canceled press conferences because he didn't want to have any of the questions about the Russian hacks appear. He didn't want to be challenged in that way. So he essentially went on a sort of media dance, and people thought that this would be a good person to run the country. Like, that's what always is constantly shocking me. I'm sorry,
but
You're gonna have to get over it, Trecia, because they did, and like,
well, you know,
I don't know what to
I mean,
tell you,
Like well over a month ago.
I think we had the discussion.
I'm constantly being appalled by it every time.
But you know, but think about it this way. This is the same country that elected a movie star in Ronald Reagan as the president in the past. We've elected a governor who is not even a born American and can barely speak English properly. And by no means am I making this an insult regarding Arnold Schwarzenegger and his intelligence and anything. What I'm just simply saying, this is the same country that elected a wrestler as a governor of Minnesota. So this is well within American, you know, I guess, nuance or sensibility to do something like this. But I think what is strikingly bizarre here, and I think it's something you touched on, and I think which needs to be the focus constantly with how you need to handle Trump and deal with him, is that forget what he's doing publicly and concentrate on the thing he's doing quietly.
Exactly.
Because then, and I think because Kanye West is nothing. He is crazy. He's not well. Nothing good could come of that meeting. Whether he actually chooses him for actual cabinet position, we know nothing good is going to come of that meeting. I mean, and that's a possibility, right? But I think in general, look at the Secretary of State now. He put some Putin boyfriend, as you call him, Chris, and tied with the oil companies. So we are back on the oil train against this. That's what we need to be focused on. But anyway, I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Well, we're gonna say goodbye to you, but before you go, do you have a media recommendation? Something that you've seen, heard, or read that you think other people should see, hear, or read?
It's not my dentist.
Oh, shit.
he really listens. Like,
You are a fan.
I am honored, even though you rejected it. Like, the fact that you would listen that closely.
And I am a little bit conflicted that you're shading Tom and Jerry, but you let Mickey Mouse run amok. But
you really
Wow,
do
Jason,
recognize that
Jason-
everything I say.
Jason, he has a chart of every recommendation.
No.
And he's gonna
No,
comment on
actually,
each one
no.
right now.
The reason why I remember them is because you make them so lively, Chris. That's why I'm Team Chris. But I know Trecia is gonna hate me for this, but
okay, fine.
She blames it, and there is a point to that. But I've just been recently reading the new Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, and you can give a huff as you did for Cornel West. But but I think what is interesting about this book, as we discuss Black Lives, it's been a constant theme of this show, Black Lives Matter, and also the issue of criminal justice, and we've asked about getting rid of. I think the question came up recently of getting rid of a major restructuring. But she brings forward a very wonderful argument, I think, in not just how she sees the new prison system as being new slavery, but also how the legal system, how the Supreme Court justices' decisions, etc., has actually caused this to be in effect, and how the drug war in America basically is being conducted. And I think that's a really good, it sort of gives a broad overview, whether or not you agree with her premise towards the end of this is new slavery, but the information, the factual information is there. and it's vote consuming, I think so.
All right.
Oh, I see.
Awesome.
I see why he called. I see why he checked me on that. I get it. So poor me. So Michelle.
What? No. I think you're making an excellent.
No,
because...
but I mean, I understand. The reason why why Reels is saying this is because I at one point in time I said that there were quite a few scholars who really generated a kind of confusion around
They did.
the election about whether Clinton was like a lesser evil than Trump or not. And, people really equivocated so much that I think there was a lot of confusion by voters about whether they should actually line up and vote for Hillary. And I think Michelle, I counted Michelle Alexander as part of that camp.
You know what I think the real situation was for those people, and I count that guy who writes for the Daily News now, Sean, somebody, I forget his name.
Yeah,
now.
Sean King. Yeah, he did the same thing.
But I think that in their mind that they believed, I think a lot of people believe that there was no way Hillary was going to lose.
So they felt comfortable.
They felt comfortable in saying whatever shit they wanted to say, so that when she did win and shit happened, they'll be like, I told you so.
Right.
Yeah.
I told you so, folks. And now, bitches, you gotta eat dirt like the rest of us. So,
or I think,
Wow.
I think their interest was in complicating the universe. But I think what they didn't realize, you know what I mean? Like, because everything is complicated, but during an election cycle, when you complicate the universe, I think it makes it that much harder. And by Trump going very simple and keeping it very basic,
the message was very simple. Yeah,
exactly. And I think Hillary's message was made way too complicated. She's a complex candidate, and it just, you just didn't have an idea of what you were voting for. And I think a lot of people spent a lot of time wondering what they should be voting against. And I think that's just it's always a bad thing to have people have to do two steps. Best to have them just vote for one thing.
Exactly.
And I think making America great again was an easier.
So simple. It's so simple.
You know what I mean? It's like, make America great.
Who can be against that, right? I mean, it's just so simple. Yeah.
It's so simple. Meanwhile, folks on the left spent all this time saying, well, Hillary, and then everyone spent time talking about what made her complicated and nuanced. And some people just checked out.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I still think people are just stupid.
That's why it needed to be straightforward, though. The message needed to
No, I mean, yeah, that's true. But I mean, like, I don't understand it. It wasn't, it wasn't that hard, people. It really wasn't. I mean, it's just almost like you saw, there was a rope hanging near the side of the cliff. And you decided, you know what? I'm not going to climb down with the rope. I might burn my hands. I'm going to jump over. And
that is a great analogy. That is analogy.
Because, we got to get to the bottom of the thing really quickly. There is.
Oh, that's a really great analogy.
Let's jump over. You know what? Hey, Superman can do it. I can do it. Oh my God,
that's great. I love that.
God, no. And you know what? People are just completely stupid.
And on that note, Reels, that's how you're going out. People are stupid.
Mic drop.
Thank you very much. I enjoy it. Team Chris all the way.
Yes.
Wow.
Team Chris Revolution.
Betrayed in the heart.
But you know what? Because I'm Team Andreen. Because here you're Team Trecia. You're on the run, bitch.
Jesus. Good night, Reels. Bye.
Good night.
Oh boy.
So I want to talk about one of your topics, Chris.
All right. So I had, just in case we had no one interested in coming on, I had prepared some topics to talk about. So the one that's sticking with me is that Amazon has announced plans to move forward with this sort of grab and go situation at a brick and mortar store. They have it for their employees in Seattle, but they're going to open one to the public. The idea is that you walk in, you take what you want, and you run the fuck out the door. Scanners or whatever are going to check your phone and just bill you on the back end. Now, I love this idea. It's the convenience of it. I don't know what to do with myself. I just want to spin around in a circle, Annie in the musical. I know I'm gonna like it here. However,
that's awesome.
How is this not the bleak future that's been promised to us by over 400 million dystopian future novels written in the last century. I mean, we have kiosks at McDonald's, we have self-checkout at the supermarket, and now we have an experience so close to shoplifting, right? that it's going to thrill the masses. There's like a bigger question here about technology. Although I am totally sweating about the convenience of this, right? If we, much like social media, like I was like, cancel it. If we do not put the reins on technology, everyone will be run out of jobs. The idea that manufacturing jobs have quote unquote left the country and people are going to quote unquote bring them back, like that is such a fiction. But alongside that fiction, we are automating tasks left and right. And everyone is applauding it and excited about it. But I mean, the simple question I want to ask you two is, how do we stop technology from marching towards building a Terminator, sending it back in time to kill Sarah Connor? What do you think? Go ahead.
Well, can I see? I'm going to put that question aside for a second.
Well, that's the only thing I'm interested in. So.
No, but I go back to, and I feel like, Chris, on other topics, you and I see eye to eye when, like, what the problem is, like, is not what is commonly talked about the problem. So to me, the problem is not technology creating automation, which makes certain types of labor by people unnecessary. That's a solution. The problem is wealth. That is wealth being is wealth concentration. That's the problem. If we were all benefiting equally from this automation, then we would all be for it. And on this kind of issue, I'm kind of a Marxist. Like in the sense that we should be wanting technology. Like it kind of reminds me of Bill Maher when people talk about coal and bring back coal. He's like, why are we worried about saving coal jobs? They're shit jobs. Like, people die from that shit. I
saw that, actually.
He said it many times. And I kind of feel like, I mean, I haven't worked in an Amazon warehouse, but from everything I've read and heard, these are not the jobs we should be dying to keep. So I think when we get frustrated by job loss, which of course we should be, it's not that we should be trying to stop technology from replacing, shit jobs. Like, we should want that. We should be looking at how do we make sure wealth gets distributed in such a way that there's equitable benefit from technological advancement.
I mean, I think you make a fair point, Jason, because I think.
Wait.
Yeah. Wait. What happened? Trecia, we don't hear you. What happened?
Oh no, I'm here.
I made a fair point. You were praising my point.
This is live.
I know.
Stop fucking around, Trecia. You're late. Your sound's in and out. Come on.
No, I'm trying to make sure I don't inject any crazy noises. But no, I think one of the things I find interesting is that we don't use this as an opportunity to talk about the world of work. Right? I mean, I think this is wealth distribution. The only means that we have come up with to handle that has been through work, right? That's our solution. You work 9 to 5 and you get paid.
Mm-hmm.
And we are so used to an orientation in life and about life that involves work. And so much of people's self-definition is involving the work they do, that I think that I think this world of like automation is just scary on like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. When really it could be an opportunity for us to ask the kinds of questions of like, okay, what were the jobs that a robot really should do? And because it's repetitive, it's monotonous, it's potentially dangerous.
It's dangerous. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Exactly. Right. And so now can we then use this as an opportunity to talk about meaningful work? Could we use this as an opportunity to talk about a different type of work week, a different type of life?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But I don't feel like we've been given permission to go down that road because think about the model that was being offered to people who were losing their jobs. There was this model of retraining. But folks were like, I don't want to be retrained. I want to do the thing that I've always known how to do. They didn't want to exist in this sort of new no man's land where I have to acquire or develop skill. But I mean, but on some level it does though, right? Because just think about, I mean,
like on an individual, like sort of in an individual psychological sense, someone who's resistant to change.
Right.
Of course, that makes quote unquote sense.
Yep.
But it doesn't make sense in a societal sense. You know, you said something once, this is barely related, but Trecia, you said something, one of my favorite Trecia quotes is that during the whole bank bailout period several years ago, you had said, B, if the government bailed out the Pony Express. And remember when you
Yeah.
It's totally true. Like here we are like trying to save coal jobs when cleaner energy could create more jobs and be better for the environment and give a higher energy output. But we still are catering to people who literally want to bang rocks together to get energy.
And also but part of that too is then we also have industries that are, or people who make all of their money from those industries who are resisting that change, right? Sure. They also have a stake in resisting, and they have more money to bring on the table to sort of invite this kind of like love affair with coal to continue.
Well, like we said earlier, those businesses should be allowed to fail. But like you said, we're not letting that happen.
No. And so I understand that tension though. I really understand this tension, but I want us to ask that. I want to ask about a work week that's not 40 hours. Like, and I feel like some jobs are monotonous. Like, I mean, I love that they happen and I love that people get to work. But part of, I think one of the reasons why people are so fearful of change is because we've never given them a model where work was not at the center. Like, what would leisure culture be like? What would, what
fantasy?
I mean, but I mean, we can ask that question with some seriousness, right? But maybe we need to have some base in society to allow people to feel less afraid. So if we did have healthcare that wasn't linked to work, maybe people would be less fearful, right? If we did have certain kind of base support, talking socialism, I guess. But if there were some base supports, maybe this risk of kind of having to shift our relationship with work wouldn't be so fear-inducing. Thing we have is completely built on the work model. Our health insurance was built on the work model. Life savings is built on it. I mean, our home. I mean, it's so essential. This contract we have between work and payment and roof over our heads. You know what I mean? I mean, I think Jason might have brought this up maybe several months ago when we were talking about how some countries are exploring the idea of kind of like a base income, not even a base income, maybe like a base stipend, so that people's needs can minimally be met.
Yes.
I mean, do you think, I can't imagine a world where we can begin to have that conversation, but it feels like it would be necessary if you do introduce more automation, where certain jobs just simply don't exist anymore. Right. We'd have to turn that whole thing upside down, right? Or no?
Oh, I think the answer is yes. And I mean, the challenge with this is, given the fact that wealth is concentrated tremendously in a very small group of people, the only way, I mean, this is where to put in, so, you know, notwithstanding everything I said before, to put it into practice, it involves significant tax policy change.
Yeah.
And not the kind that is popular. So that's the challenge. I mean, if you look at like certain communist countries, like if you look at Cuba under Castro, I mean, arguably it was an effort to have a society like we're describing, but because, you know, there was always the sense that, well, but if we're open to foreign investment and if, like, you know, we're an open market to other countries, you know, then it's all going to fall apart because people are going to get greedy. And so then you end up with a totalitarian regime and people can't move. Like, we haven't figured out how to put it into practice. And I don't have the answer either. But I think the questions you're asking, Trecia, are the right ones. And as I was saying before, I think they're more productive ones than how do we save minimum wage jobs, you know, by you know, the word you used, Chris, reining in technology. I mean, not to say technology should go unfettered, but again, like what you're saying about this Amazon store, I mean, I'm pretty intrigued by it. It's one of those things. It's like an innovation that I never would have thought of, and yet it makes so much sense with the technology we have.
And you'd shop there.
I would definitely shop there, and the answer can't be, well, we don't want to do that because we want to save a bunch of minimum wage jobs of people running around a warehouse. Like that's definitely not the right answer. But admittedly, how we get to an economy and a society where, like you're saying, Tricia, like work is not the central ego identification, and how you get everything, like it's a tough climb. Like I don't know. I don't know how to do it.
I like the idea of mandatory minimum income. We'd have to change so much about the way we think about everything, but I think that's a great idea. If everyone, could you imagine if just every adult over a certain age simply received whatever the figure was, even if it was something like $17,000 a year or $14,000 a year, just enough to keep you from dying on the street.
Yes.
And then you can work on top of that. Fine, get a part-time job. But then you could afford to take that server, that waiter job that pays you $4.50 an hour plus tips at some greasy spoon diner. Then you could afford to do it and have a place to live and be able to feed your family. I love the idea. Of course, that would require, yes, if you make more than $100,000 a year, you're in a 56% tax bracket. But I mean, I think it would be worth it. We'd have to change the way we thought about capitalism altogether.
Right. We would.
I mean, I think it would. And I think people change their, I mean, right now, those things are considered social welfare, right? But in a weird, but I think you could sell them as actually a driver of innovation, because what you do is you take the onus of kind of like, where am I going to get my next meal out of consideration, and maybe people actually could be freed up to do the thing that folks seem to want, which is to spend a lot of their money, leisure time doing what I mean, it's just, I don't know. I think that you could actually craft a fairly interesting universe and a fairly interesting world if that was allowed to happen. But right now, we really believe people should live or die based on really, really silly indicators like race, gender,
income.
Right. Well, and the other piece of all this, which I feel like we always get to this point and then we all roll our eyes because no one knows what to do about it, even though it's my day job, is like, to have an equitable society like this, like you need an equitable education system, which we just don't have. But that's part of the problem right now. Is there's a small portion of the population, relatively small, that receives the education needed to benefit from technological advancement, and then there's a lot of the population that does not, right? And so they're on the other end of the technological advancement. And that's a failure of education system. If we're supposed to have a free and universal education system where everyone has the opportunity to benefit from advancement, and we just do not have that.
Well, I was just doing like a quick read up, and apparently going as far back as as 1795, Thomas Paine actually was talking about the idea of a citizen's dividend, which all U.S. citizens should get as compensation.
Really, I didn't.
Which is, but I remember this is when this was when sort of the country was sort of somewhat uniform, right, in look and feel. So the idea of like a mandatory sort of minimum, income probably makes sense when you assume the world or the U.S. is all made up of similar kinds of people. But as soon as you have to deal with kind of diversity, I'm sure people are like, well, who deserves it? You don't deserve it. Those kinds of conversations happen. But I mean, there's some room for that.
That's very interesting. I'm going to read up on that.
I know. I love Tricia's media recommendation is a pamphlet from 1795 by Thomas Paine. I think that's awesome. I think that's so awesome.
I also like the fact that in the midst of the conversation, she was able to perform a smooth Google and read it fast enough to summarize it for everybody. Well done.
Well, I mean, and I also will say I'm actually really intrigued now because apparently a couple of economists have tried this idea or have thought about this idea, and I guess they call it a negative income tax.
Oh, that's interesting.
So there is some history.
You guys want to
for that
You guys
idea.
ready to open up the government? Let's go.
No, you know what though?
Everyone listening, let's go.
This issue, the guaranteed income proposal, there actually are people on the right that are for it.
Yes, I've heard that.
Because it would allow people to participate in the economy. It's the whole kind of like Henry Ford, like I pay my people well so they can buy my cars. It's like
Yes.
Mhm.
See, that's what I was using as my example.
I actually think that this is an idea that there could be some real cross-sector organizing around. It's something that can make sense to both liberals and conservatives, and we have so few of those ideas lately.
I know. Maybe that's the one thing that will emerge out of like a government that is run so pro business. No, but basically, I mean, this is potentially a natural outcome of a Trump universe where you reduce what the government is able to offer to a citizen to the point where you're gonna have to start coming up with alternative solutions. I don't know. Well, that's my downside. That's my upside of that.
I'm not necessarily a fan of this, but a 45% tariff on a company because they move. I mean, that is, that's in that realm, right? It's like, it's because government has failed to, protect jobs. It's, now government's going to do something really extreme. Again, I'm not saying I agree with it, but yeah, I don't know. It's something that I do think you could find support for from disparate quarters.
And maybe my ex-boyfriend, who I absolutely despise, Bernie Sanders, might be able to jump on. Yeah, I break up with him.
Despise him?
You know what? Can I tell you? I actually do. And
no,
I know
you
it's
guys
weird.
were meant for each other. He had crazy ideas. You catered to them.
I find Bernie Sanders at the moment quite insufferable because one of the things I think that's really because I think Bernie really buys into this economic anxiety idea so fully that he's really stifling conversations that need to be happened around race. And that this is really, I mean, it's racism was a part of what happened in the election. And to have somebody like Bernie on the left offering a space where we can kind of smooth that over and forget about it, I'm having real problems with him. I really do. I don't think this is his intention.
He's in Vermont. What do you, I mean?
But he's really giving people room to really try to move away from the real heart and soul of what people voted for. I mean, I know people want to pretend they voted for their economics, but they voted for hate as well. And they voted for prejudice, and they voted for registries, and they voted for mass deportation. And I mean, they voted for a lot of things that were going to impact their fellow citizenry. And so we have to talk about that. But I feel like he has not given us room to have those kinds of conversations because he's right back on that money train. He's right back on that class economic bandwagon. And there's a reason why he lost.
Really. No, I agree. And it's actually, this relates so much to what you and Reels were talking about before about, like, Hillary was willing to have the race conversations, but then she kept getting stymied by things she had said in the past that had racial overtones. It's like we need a candidate who will be as willing to address that issue and as sensitive to it, not that issue, but those issues, like Hillary was, but without the baggage.
Yeah,
and I don't mean that in a dismissive way, but just without like, hey, look, 20 years ago you were saying this. Like it just kept. I mean, it really was baggage. It just kept weighing her down. We need someone who doesn't have that history, who can, as you said, be fresh and just say, like, we're going to deal with this issue, and I it's something I have dealt with. It's not something that I used to ignore, and now I'm trying to deal with.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, he's really giving me problems. Because they really need him to, everyone's looking for that conversation. If you give them an out, they'll take it.
Right. That's right. That's well said.
Well, all right. Well, guys, we're going to go into our media recommendations. Again, that's something that you saw, heard, or read that you think other people should see, hear, or read. And if anyone is still listening to this, if you want to share one, let me know and we can bring you on to share it. But who would like to go first?
I'll go first.
Go.
I, in my day job, I serve on the diversity and inclusion committee of the national organization I work for. And on that committee, we decided that our organization really could use um, common language when it comes to talking about sensitive issues, important issues like race equity, white supremacy, that kind of thing. And so I volunteered, different people are taking on different tasks. I volunteered to kind of put together a brief speaker glossary. And it's not that all these terms have one right definition, but just so that we have a common language. And so there's a particular website, racialequitytools.org, that I ended up going on. And I just found it incredibly helpful to read pretty thorough definitions of different words that some of them get tossed around a lot, some of them don't get tossed around enough. And I didn't agree, or agree is not the right word. I didn't find every definition in here particularly helpful. With many of the words, I ended up going and looking them up in other places and finding other definitions. But as a springboard to think about these terms and how they can be helpful in facilitating conversations among diverse, and I mean diverse, including like white people who aren't always comfortable talking about some of this stuff. I just found it like a really helpful exercise. I'm hoping it's helpful to my organization. And in the spirit of Chris, who has recently taken to addressing the white sector of our audience and giving them advice, I will say to my fellow white Americans, like, I think this is actually a useful tool, but not just for white people.
It's not just for white people anymore. No.
That's right.
I'm gonna go. I have a really quick recommendation. I yesterday I went to go see The Waitress on Broadway.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that's not my media recommendation.
Oh.
I think you should see it. I mean, it's a fun show, but I'm not recommending it. What I am going to recommend is that after seeing it, I got into a conversation just about working class people, and I had recommended to a friend the book Nickel and Dimed by Barbara Ehrenreich.
Yeah.
And if you haven't read it, you should read it. It's actually free online. I found a free PDF online, and I don't think I've read it in I think I had to read it in grad school. So I haven't read it in a long time, but it's the author, Barbara Ehrenreich. She travels to a couple of different parts of the country and tries to get a minimum wage paying job, get an apartment, and sort of live her life and the difficulties therein, and sort of the kind of ridiculousness and cruelty of us asking people to make $8 an hour to maintain a home, to be able to feed themselves and their family, and not run afoul of anything bad happening to them. It's I mean, if you still need your eyes opened about these sorts of things, then please read the book. But it's at once heartbreaking, but absolutely arresting. If you're not sure if the book's free, I'll post the link on the Outrageous page and just read the first 3 pages. And if you don't like it, put it down. But I think you're going to be able to carry it through. It's a pretty compelling story.
Nice.
Oh, nice. So weirdly enough, I read a book several years ago, and I go back to it every now and then. And now it seems like it's actually appropriate. First of all, I'm going to do 2 recommendations. One, I'm going to hope that you all listen to it, and I haven't listened to it yet, but I'm going to listen to it, and hopefully we might be able to have like a conversation about it next time. I'm going to listen and see. So apparently, I'm going to share the link later, and it's Freakonomics Radio. Did an episode called "Is the World Ready for Guaranteed Basic Income?" So that was done on April 13th, 2016. So there's actually a podcast that's exploring the very question that we just raised, which is the idea of like a basic income for everyone. I think that's kind of cool. And then relatedly, years ago, I went through my mom's books and stole something that she had read for school. And I've always loved it. So I'm going to recommend this book called Leisure: The Basis of Culture by Joseph Piper. And I don't know, I've just always I've always loved the book. It's really just a kind of exploration of like what it means for us to have free time and what's possible when you have free time. And his main contention is that because we're so focused on labor, we've lost sight of the benefits of leisure. And his his key exploration is that he didn't he thinks that we wouldn't have had religion if we, and the good parts of it, not the dodgy parts, but the good parts of religion.
Chris is like,
There's
what? Good
I
parts?
know
What are you
there's some
talking
good parts that
Don't even get me started.
that it's because of leisure that we can actually contemplate the nature of God. And so it's not organized religion. It's really sort of that personal relationship. So out of leisure comes opportunity for us to think about our, our place in the world, think about the people we love, connect with those that we love. I mean, so I'm kind of ready to have a little bit of this sort of odd conversation about leisure again, because I'm ready to fight for this universal basic income. I'm ready to change the work week.
I'm ready to work less.
I'm ready to work less. I'm ready to
have more vacation. Damn it.
Yes, and I'm ready to help inform the culture around a desire to move away from coal, to move away from oil. I don't know. I'm somehow or another my imagination is being stirred up. Chris, I don't know if you remember this, but many years ago we always talk about how dark and dystopic the future has always been and is always presented.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me, I feel like we need to introduce a different vision of the future, because I've often felt like we were going to necessarily have that dark future because we spent so much time thinking about it. Like we do not do enough of Star Trek's future. We always do the other side.
Well, it's funny you said, do I remember us talking about this? I'm pretty certain we talked about that on last week's episode.
Did we talk about that? Dark dystopic future? But this is a theme. We've talked about this many times over the years.
We're talking about it. I mean, offline, I haven't talked about this on the podcast, but offline, I was very activated by watching Westworld, which is the HBO show about a future.
Is that your recommendation, Chris?
No, it's not.
I just wanted to give you a chance to say that.
I think it, honestly, I think as a science fiction show, I actually think it's successful, which is amazing because there's so few good science fiction shows in this vein. But again, it's a future where we're told that human beings have put in a intense amount of energy and money, and the result is that it allows them to be even more violent and more rapey than we already are, like as if that's something basic to us. And when you tell these stories over and over again, it becomes instructive. And I challenge that. So these dystopian futures, like Trecia said, you just thought that's where we'd end up. It's like, our storytellers need to do better. We need more Gene Roddenberrys who have a vision for the future that don't always include us destroying each other. Think about this. Think about every science fiction show or movie that you've ever seen. When aliens arrive, their implicit motive is to destroy us, right? Even when they're supra intelligent.
Yeah.
Right? When they are far beyond us technologically, socially, and philosophically, it comes down to they want to exterminate us. What's the lesson being taught there? Like if we were 100 times smarter, extermination would still be in our mind for other cultures. Like that's, no, I'm not going to accept that. That doesn't make any sense. We can do better. We just don't. So all storytellers out there, do better.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yes.
Tell them, Chris.
Yes.
Tell them.
And you know what? And that is how we're ending the live show. This was a lot of fun, guys.
It was fun. I appreciate our two guests.
I know. Thank you, guests, for coming on. Everyone else was too scared to come on. Lurkers, thank you for listening. I want to thank my roommate who did not stream any shows, has been sitting quietly in his room while I'd done this. So thank you, Josh. And yeah, do you guys want to do this again sometime?
I definitely want to do it again.
All right. Maybe we can do it live and in person. We can sell tickets, Madison Square Garden.
Not quite.
No, maybe just my living room. All right.
Have a big party there. I love it.
All right, everybody. And to everyone listening, good night.
Good night.
Bye.